Anthem is generating an insane amount of hype, and even though a lot of us have our concerns about it, let's be honest, we're at least a little bit excited for Anthem to come out. So before the release of Anthem, let's talk about the phrase that's been used ever since the first tidbit of information about Anthem was released. And that is, of course, will Anthem be the Destiny killer? And we've all heard people say, and I'm sure even a lot of you have said, Destiny is dead. But the fact that we're still talking about it shows that it's not, despite what most people choose to believe. So let's do what no one's actually ever done yet, and put that statement to the test, and compare the two games to find out if Anthem can be the Destiny killer. Let's take a look. Just before we get into the comparison, just in case you didn't watch last week's video, we just hit 100 subscribers, which is a big milestone for the channel. So I just want to thank you guys for being part of the journey so far, and I'm really excited for what this channel can become. So let's keep it going. Alright, so there's a lot to go over here, and not just within the actual content of the games themselves, but the situation that both developers are in shouldn't go unspoken about either, and I want to give my thoughts about that, so stick around till the end for that. Now, I'm not sure about all of you, but when I'm going to decide between two games, particularly RPGs, I think the three most important aspects come down to story, gameplay, and endgame. So those are the three pillars I want to center this comparison around, and let's start with the story. Destiny's story was one that came under a lot of criticism, and especially in Destiny 1. Where apparently no one had time to explain what the hell was actually going on in the world of Destiny.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
But after a ridiculously weak story in Destiny 1 and all of its expansions, we were greeted with a much improved story in the sequel, even though it was nothing amazing. Yes, Destiny 2's main story centered around the extremely predictable storyline that involved taking down Dominus Gaul, who I felt was strangely one-dimensional. And after a couple of really good opening sequences that made him out to be a really cool villain, he kinda just fell flat after that.
I am Gaul, and your light is mine.
Destiny 2's story continued in some weak DLCs after that, but mainly picked up in the Year 2 expansion Forsaken, where again, our story centered around taking down Prince Aldrin, brother of Queen Mara Sov, who were both supposed to be dead, but remembering that no one can die in video games, we let that go and continued with the story anyway. And similar to the main story, this story was much improved and took Destiny one step forward with its storyline as well. But maybe the biggest part of Destiny's story is actually told within the game's endless amounts of lore. And Destiny 2 implemented some of that lore into the game after the release of Forsaken, and continued the storyline weeks after the DLC's launch, with new weekly quests within the stunning Awoken homeland of the Dreaming City. Moving over to Anthem's story, similar to Destiny actually, in Anthem our home base is a big tower-like structure that'll be one of the main hubs within the game. Within this world, gods called Shapers summoned the Anthem of Creation to create and transform the world we play in. Mysteriously though, these gods left with their work unfinished. In Anthem, we play as freelancers and use 4 different exosuits called Javelins, and with these suits, our goal is to try to acquire Shaper relics in order to harvest the energy of the Anthem of Creation. The main premise of the storyline will be focused around the Anthem of Creation, which, as the latest trailer describes, controls the power of life and death, creation and destruction.
The Anthem of Creation is everything. To control it is everything.
Okay, but what could he even do with it?
What could you do with the power of life and death, creation and destruction?
He would be a god.
It's pretty safe to assume that the main villain will also be trying to control the Anthem of Creation and undoubtedly trying to destroy us and kill us with it. The main villain does look pretty cool, but let's hope there's more to this villain than there was with Gaul in Destiny 2. Because they do have a few similarities based on what we've seen so far.
Imagine all the good that we could do. We decide what's best for the world. The power of pure creation at our fingertips.
Anthem's story will also implement what BioWare is calling Our World, Your Story, which is a fancy way of saying that the story is single player while the gameplay is multiplayer. So your cutscenes will feature you and you only. You can make your own decisions, and as a result, your story will be different to your friends. But all of the story missions will actually remain the same, just with different dialogue, so it can still be played cooperatively. We haven't seen this in a game like this before, really, and although it kind of takes away a bit of the realism, hopefully it can add depth to the story itself. So in terms of which game will have a better story, I'll put my faith in BioWare, because of their history with the Mass Effect franchise. But at the same time, a lot of people had faith in Bungie, coming off some pretty good stories in the Halo series, and we saw how that turned out. Moving on to the gameplay, Destiny 2 has some of the best gunplay of any first-person shooter, let alone an RPG. While the game has copped a lot of criticism, and most of it justified, it's never been criticised for its gameplay. In Destiny 2, there's 3 different classes to choose from. The Titan, Warlock, and Hunter, each with 3 different subclasses and 6 different ultimate abilities to choose from. Where the game had a relatively weak launch in terms of customization, over the past year, especially with the release of Forsaken, Bungie has been able to take the gameplay to new heights with the introduction of new weapon types, new abilities, and new customization options, and has now been able to put Destiny in a spot where, in terms of gameplay, no AAA RPG has really challenged it. But anyway, most of us have seen or played Destiny, so we know what the gameplay is like, so let's move over to Anthem. While no AAA RPG has challenged Destiny yet, if I had to pick one that would be able to do that, I'd put my money on Anthem. Where Destiny has 3 classes, Anthem has 4 javelins, each with its own unique abilities and defined role, something that Destiny never really went along with. What's unique about Anthem's javelins is the fact that you can switch between any javelin you like, whenever you like. As opposed to Destiny, where if you want to play a new class, you have to literally start from scratch with a new character. And this undoubtedly will give Anthem a massive boost in terms of diversity and replayability. Anthem's 4 javelins are the Ranger, which is the starting javelin and is sort of like a hybrid class, or a jack of all trades. The Colossus, which is Anthem's tank class. The Colossus can deal massive damage and take a lot more damage. The Interceptor, which is Anthem's assassin-like class. The Interceptor is centered around getting in, dealing damage with mostly melee abilities, and getting out. And lastly, there's the Storm, the Warlock-like class, which will use magic and elemental damage to deal massive damage to enemies. But the Storm won't have much health, so attack carefully. If you want a more in-depth breakdown of Anthem's characters, click the card in the top right and that'll take you to another video where I broke that down. From what we've seen with Anthem's gunplay in the developer live streams, it looks pretty smooth. The gunplay itself though probably wouldn't rival Destiny, but as for the javelins themselves, yeah, I think it's got a pretty good shot. I'll let you be the judge. And finally, we have the all-important Endgame, and let's switch it up and start with Anthem. Let me start off by saying that I've got mixed emotions about Anthem's Endgame, and I've voiced my concerns about that before. But what we've seen from the Endgame does look pretty promising. The 2 main Endgame activities at launch will be Strongholds and Legendary Contracts. Strongholds are essentially massive dungeons, where we'll go in, complete a variety of objectives, and eventually take down a final boss. And the Stronghold gameplay we've seen actually looks pretty good. There will be 6 difficulties to play Strongholds on. There's easy, normal, and hard, and also Grandmaster 1, 2, and 3. And it's those Grandmaster difficulties that's what's going to keep us coming back, because as you complete Strongholds on harder difficulties, you'll get better loot. As for Legendary Contracts, we actually just got a lot more info on that in the last developer livestream. The new info we got about Legendary Contracts are that as you complete more contracts with each NPC, they'll eventually give you a Legendary Contract. And that will be a quest where you'll complete multiple objectives and be rewarded with endgame loot, as you can see in the gameplay on screen. And in that livestream, what the senior designer, Emily Taylor, said is that they want these to be replayable missions that will be slightly different each time. So these contracts will be things you can come back to and complete multiple times. And finally, we have the all-elusive Shaper Storms, something that BioWare has been pretty hesitant to talk about. BioWare has constantly dodged the question about whether raids will be in the game or not, and have repeatedly answered that question by saying that there won't be raids, but there will be something similar. And it's been widely rumoured around the community that it will be Shaper Storms. And this is where my concern lies, with the fact that we don't know anything about this yet. But hopefully we get some info soon. So moving over to Destiny, Destiny's Endgame has been a long journey. Looking back to Destiny 1, at the very beginning it was really weak, and somehow Destiny 2's launch wasn't much better in terms of how much there was to do. But right now, with the release of Forsaken and even Black Armory, the latest DLC, Destiny's Endgame has been expanded to the point where it will take you months to complete everything. Destiny's Endgame has activities like strikes, daily missions, public events like the Blind Well, forges, raids, and even the Crucible, which is Destiny's version of PvP, which is something that Anthem won't have. On top of that, there's exclusive weapons to farm, specific weapon roles that can keep players coming back, and even weekly bounties. Destiny is now at a point where each and every week there's something new to do, and it sets a pretty high standard in terms of endgame content and replayability. So let's sum it all up. Will Anthem be the Destiny killer that most of the world seemingly wants it to be? Yes. It will, but only temporarily. On the surface, Anthem looks like it has all the tools it needs to be a successful game, but there's a few things to take into account. Anthem is being published by EA, and while I think Anthem will have a very strong launch, we've seen how EA can change the lifespan of a game through monetization and a bunch of greedy and anti-consumer practices. Just look at the games EA has published in the past few years. Despite that though, I do think Anthem will overtake Destiny, but that's also partially because Destiny is essentially going to be irrelevant for the next year. We're all aware by now that Activision and Bungie have split, but Bungie has also said that they'll be continuing the content release schedule that was initially planned, with 2 small DLCs still coming out this year. And the reality of those DLCs are, no one is going to stop playing a game like Anthem just to come back to play small DLCs that will be rendered irrelevant when the next Destiny game comes out. And this is what I mean when I say Anthem will only temporarily kill Destiny. Bungie is now an independent studio, and they now have the opportunity to reinvent the Destiny franchise with the next Destiny game, without the plague that is Activision hanging over them. And when the next Destiny game comes out, it has the potential to be one of the best RPGs we've ever seen. But, of course, only time will tell. So now I want to flip the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts on Anthem, and what are your thoughts on Destiny and Bungie's split from Activision? Do you think Anthem will kill Destiny for good, or do you think Destiny will come back better than ever? Let me know, and let's have a chat in the comments below. So, that'll do it for today guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, smash that like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more videos like this once and sometimes twice per week. If you want to watch more TGG videos, click one of the 2 videos on the screen if you haven't seen them yet, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace!